Meeting. I know Eric is on his way, but we hope he remembers. But I'd like to get started. Good evening. Welcome, commissioners, participants, and interested parties to the April 22nd, 2021 meeting of Cohasset Conservation Committee. I'm Chris McFarland, Chairman of the Conservation Committee, and we'll be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetland Protection Act, Cohasset Stormwater Management Regulations. We'll be operating this meeting using a Zoom platform, which we will discuss shortly. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and the town's Conservation Agent for one more day, Jeff Summers. And now take a roll call of Conservation Commissioners and Associate Commissioners. Please respond by saying present. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Trish Grady.
Trish Grady, present.
Dave Campari is not with us this evening. Marianne Weatherall.
Present.
Chris McFarland is present. Tom Bell.
Tom Bell, present.
Heather Stites. Not here this evening either. And Eric Eisenhower has not shown up either. So at this time, we're going to operate with 4 commissioners, a quorum of 4. We'll be taking all votes via roll call with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain. For listeners, and for the record, there was a hearing scheduled for 7:30, NOI 21-06 and Stormwater Permit 2107, 1 Pleasant Street will not be heard this evening and is continued until May the 20th.
Having an email from Eric about he's having difficulty getting in.
I did as well, and I used the webinar agenda. I used the ID number 837-3611-0348, and then the password code.
I used the link that Jeff sent around a little while ago. Worked fine.
I did have an email, but I somehow lost it.
Let me see if I can find it.
Did
Sorry.
do you want to write him back with this passcode?
Well, I'm telling him to try this link
Oh, okay.
again. I had no problem at all, so he should be able to use it. I'm going to wait 1 minute and then we're going to move on. Jeff, does he need to be present for the reading of the public hearing notice?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to start by reading. We'll see if we can get him in. Maybe someone else could send him the other information. Notice of public hearing for, in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 22nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicants Rick Rakowski and Helen Ra to amend Stormwater Permit 19-23 to reflect changes to the original plans and overall scope of the project at 130 Nichols Road. Jeff, I believe this is John Cavanara.
Yep.
So if you can, and Mr. Eisenhower has joined us, so we are going to
Good evening.
change our quorum to 5.
John, is John Zimmer with you guys on this?
No, he's not.
Okay.
But you have Sean. Thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is John Cavanaro. I'm a civil engineer from Cavanaro Consulting in Norwell, and I'm here representing Helen Rahr and Rick Ruskowski. And as I mentioned, Sean Papich is here with us this evening, landscape architect. For any questions on landscape architecture. If you may recall, most or some of you were on the commission at the time this project was approved back in 2019. And it has been reduced somewhat in scope since then. Primarily, essentially, we've removed the tennis court. It's about a 5,700 square foot tennis court that was originally proposed to be maintained. It's an existing tennis court on the property that was planning to stay, and that has been eliminated from the project. The house and porches were also reduced by about 900 square feet. And what's been replaced and restored is a portion of the paved driveway that was getting reduced in size. We're proposing to essentially make the driveway from Nichols Road to the top of the turning court paved, which still ends up in a net reduction in overall impervious from the existing conditions. So,
John, I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Would
Yes.
you be able to throw up the site plan so we can see it
Yes,
as you explained?
absolutely.
Or if, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the existing conditions plan. So just to go through what I just mentioned quickly, this is the existing tennis court, existing house that was once here. This is the driveway that was paved up to about the top of the driveway. And then it had a large gravel sort of circuitous turnaround and parking area at the top. What's been proposed, and forgive the bullseye, that is actually a proposed well that has been added to the plan. And this site plan was used as a composite plan for both Board of Health and the Stormwater amendment. But as you can see, the house is in its general configuration as was on the approved plan. It's just been reduced. It trimmed in some areas overall by about 900 square feet. Still have patios in the back, pool with a terrace and a cabana on one end of the pool with a spa. The driveway has essentially remained the same until it gets to the top, and we've kept sort of the rectilinear parking court, but what we've modified as a result of the elimination of the 5,700 square foot tennis court, we'd like to leave this as an impervious surface up top for better turning, better maintenance, and just overall easier maneuverability. So, but as I mentioned, the net result is still a reduction from what was there originally. So from a
John,
stormwater, go ahead.
John, excuse me. I'm trying to understand. You traded the tennis court for impervious driveway. Is that what you're implying?
For the most part, yes.
What kind of a trade-off is that? The tennis court is pervious.
No, the
right?
tennis
And
court.
you're putting in-
The tennis court was
It's
paved.
impervious.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
paved.
it was an all-weather court then.
Yeah, it's an
Okay,
an
sorry.
existing paved tennis court.
Okay.
So that in essence is the gist of the amendment from what was approved.
John, do you have the previous version?
Yes.
John, was the tennis court over by where the pool was? Oh, yes.
This is what was originally approved. So this was the tennis court, pool, house, driveway. And due to the amount of impervious that was staying on the site, we had eliminated some of the pavement to essentially keep the tennis court as part of the overall impervious. But with the elimination of the tennis court, then that provides an opportunity to restore some of that driveway that was originally paved.
What part of the porch and house was removed in the 900 square feet?
Pretty much in this area, the house got narrower and a little bit shorter. from this end, but it's essentially around the entire perimeter.
And you're also asking for a new well as well?
We're applying to the Board of Health for a well, that's correct, for irrigation.
John, on your previous application, you showed the 2 beech trees which have been removed. There also is a tree line right where the well is being shown, which has been, that area has been cleared. And there's also a large swath that was cut. I think it's for electric, although it must be the biggest electric line in the world because they cleared about 40 feet wide path through there, which we don't have any record of trees on that slope. Do you have any record of the trees that were where the well is?
I can actually defer to Sean to talk a little bit about the landscape. Sean, if you're.
Yeah, I'm here. Sean Papich is Sean Papich Landscape Architecture, 222 North Street, Hingham. So we don't have record of individual trees right in the area right around the well, Chris, where you're asking about.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 beech trees that we tried to keep for as long as we could, and then ultimately 2 of those beech trees came down not far from where the well is, location is there, a little bit to the left of it on the screen, essentially. That came down that were falling apart, and the tree warden, we actually talked with the tree warden, Andy Swanson, about a number of trees that were in actually on the property as well as in the edges of the property. And he gave us some advice on removing some of those. I don't necessarily have a count or any specific specimen trees or anything like that, Chris, that came down when they were bringing the electrical through, to be honest. I don't. We didn't have anything on the base map for that in terms of individual trees in that area, other than those 2 beech.
Would you like to move on to tell us what the future landscaping is?
Could. What I could do, I could even share my screen if we want to.
Yep.
Okay. I'll see if I can do this. So our landscape plan is broken up into a couple of, can you see that at all? You see a
Yes.
landscape plan in front of you?
Yep.
So
That's cool.
the area that we were talking about, that you were describing, was in this area, and I'm kind of working around with my cursor where the well is proposed to be. There were a couple of beech trees in here. They were real close to the driveway that had seen their better days, and those 2 did come down. We are proposing to add more trees back in this area. I've got 2 separate plans for that. The more specific plan around the tennis court area, that what was going to be a tennis court area that is no longer, or is tennis court that is now removed. We have a heavy amount of vegetation we're placing between us and the neighbors downhill, as well as plantings. And I can also jump to some of the other plantings we're doing around the house. This particular plan covered areas that were primarily around where the old tennis court was. So the intent on that was to show some of the vegetation going along the hillside, where some dead trees were removed and some invasives were removed. There were some Norway maples pretty close to the street that we met with Andy Swanson with the tree warden, and he had us, gave us a go ahead to remove a few of those down near the right of way. We were actually going to vegetate this very heavily with native grasses and wildflower mix, as well as other shrubs. We're also going to add back red maple and 2 red oaks into this little area. You can see some of that along the driveway. Existing driveway, as John said, stays generally the same as what it is today. Any areas that are disturbed right on the edges are going to get revegetated. Speak to, you wanted to look at the other plan that we've got that is right around the house also. See if that comes up. That's again where we were looking around the pool area. The tennis court is up top.
Sean, just to interrupt you, you may have to back out and then come back in because we're not seeing the second plan.
How about this one? See it now?
That was the first one.
Yep, this is the second one now.
Okay,
too.
thank you.
So this is where it gets cut off. There's a lawn area now instead of the tennis court. And to the sides of the pool where we have in this flatter area, we've got this heavily vegetated slope. Vegetation around the house. I'm not sure if you really want me to get into a lot of specifics of the vegetation right around the house, but it's typically right around the house. And we'll see if I can show you. We were going to add some more plant material along the buffer with 120 nickels right here. And so you can see where we're going to add vegetation along these edges. Existing tree that stays here, other existing vegetation along this edge. Bang. Again, Chris, I think you were talking about where the well was proposed is right here.
Yeah, I mean, my comment really goes to the vegetative buffer between the house and the road, which is it's been disturbed considerably. You know, there are signs that front edge has all been blasted. I mean, you're showing a tree line there, which doesn't really exist anymore because it's all been blasted out. And I think if any area this property needs to be properly vegetated, it's that particular face. You know, the original permit had the beaches. I mean, I understand the condition they were in. I think I even mentioned to you at the time you shouldn't count on them.
Right.
But you've lost those, and as I said, it was an amazing swath that was cut for what I believe was just electric. I may be wrong, but I think for sure that attention needs to be paid to that, and that's just the comment. I'm going to kind of leave it at that.
Oh, I agree. Actually, I agree. I do believe we should come back in here and add some additional vegetation now that the way that electric came through and then created kind of the large void that's there. So I do agree with you. We would intend to come back in and revegetate along this front side now that that's happened.
So, John, going back to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't jump around because if other people have questions about landscape, I'd like them to have it. But after that, I'll jump back to the stormwater again. Do any commissioners have questions about the landscaping?
No, thank you.
So, John, my question is this: the area of impervious surface has changed from the east side of I'm guessing that's the east side of the property to the west side of the property and the south side of the property where the entry road is. Can you explain where the stormwater is now going?
Sure.
I jumped off there, John, if you want to.
That's okay.
If you would like to
Sure.
share
So
that.
the runoff will continue essentially. As you recall in the first application, the intent was always to try to reduce the amount of overland flow that sheeted off to the north onto the adjacent driveway that flowed down towards the wetland offsite. So now we'll maintain flow toward our property. We're going to have a series of catchment points at the low point between that vegetated buffer that Sean mentioned at the pool and the new lawn area where the tennis court was. So that will be graded towards the pool, captured with some yard inlets, and then go through an infiltration system and then continue to flow and connect to a catch basin in Nichols Road, which is what we always intended to do after talking to the town about making that connection. The idea is to reduce the amount of overland flow and sheet flow rolling down the driveway and coming off the site and overland on the ledge. Similarly, the house will be captured and sent to this infiltration system in the back, and the front half of the house will run to a series of manholes that will then connect and flow down to the offsite catch basin. So essentially, there's a large reduction in overland flow, and what's now being channeled to both a piping system with an infiltration area at the toe of the slope, and then on to the catch basin offsite.
John, I assume that the catch basin then would discharge to the beach. Is it sufficient to accommodate this new flow?
Yes, because we're reducing overall the amount of flow. We've again coordinated with the town about the capacity. It's 12-inch pipe that exits that catch basin. So we're not concerned about any surcharge. And we're actually putting in infiltration that even though we're reducing the amount from existing, we're still adding some to reduce that volume that's going off site.
What about potential for pollutants to run through that system?
So from what?
Washing your car, changing your oil.
So the treatment happens in this infiltration. We have a catch basin at the top of the driveway that will flow into, this is actually the treatment, the stone that this catch basin will run to. All the clean runoff from the roof will flow downstream of that.
Okay.
So again, compared to existing conditions, and that's sort of the gist of the stormwater bylaw, to make sure that we're not leaving anything worse than we're finding it. And that's the goal here, is to add more infrastructure, add more catchment areas, reduce the amount of, I mean, really the best thing to do here is to reduce the amount of impervious as much as possible.
And John, what is the actual reduction from the previous plan?
So the overall reduction from existing is about 250 square feet. What we're reducing is the tennis court was 5,700 square feet, and we're essentially trading that for the driveway.
Right, but what's the reduction in flow?
I had a similar question to that because I was looking at your numbers from the total runoff off-site of the existing to the proposed. It didn't seem like a big difference to me from existing to proposed. From the 2-year storm, there was a difference of 0.27.
Right.
The 10-year storm, it was a difference of 0.41. And the 100-year storm, it was a difference of 0.55. And
that's the target we're trying to reduce. Again, that's the stormwater permit threshold to reduce.
I'm not an engineer, so can you explain? Like, those seem like small numbers to me. So
they're less than what's existing. That's what we're achieving. We're less than what's existing. That's our threshold for a stormwater permit.
is there a way that you can capture greater amount though of flow or overground flow, underground flow?
Well, overground flow is by putting it into a system that sends it underground. So what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of uncontrolled runoff that just passes down the driveway into Nichols Road. And again, that's the threshold of a stormwater permit, is to overall reduce from what the existing condition is. And we're increasing the amount of landscape tremendously. We're removing ledge. That's part of stormwater management as well. Or that's impervious surface that creates uncontrolled runoff that runs off in areas that seep into the road and offsite to abutting properties. So what we're doing is we're reshaping the land to the best of our ability to capture that flow, increase landscape areas, and again, leave it better than we're finding it. That's the best we can do.
I do recall at one point the neighbor, I think it was Margie, who was on at the back of the house. I guess it was like she complained a lot about water flow. So is the land now?
Right. And that was the big genesis of reevaluating the tennis court, because they've lived there for 20 years. They've seen what happens at the tennis court.
Mhm.
Even though the tennis court today was pitched toward the house, it fills up. There's a lot of ledge outcrops that have been eliminated, and the runoff would come off the ledge, again, uncontrolled, off the tennis court would fill up, and it would eventually run off site down the driveway. So that is a big area of concern. The whole idea of this design was to keep everything on site, run it into catchment areas within the property, and put as much in the ground as possible. This is a shallow to bedrock site, so we don't have sort of the sandy soils that you would to put more water in the ground. What we're doing is managing the ledge with additional landscape, capturing it the best of our ability, and then sending it off site to a system that has the ability to handle it.
Do you have enough infiltration systems? I see one, and that's the newest one.
We're not, when you reduce the
Mhm.
amount of flow and impervious surface, we're not obligated to infiltrate, but we're doing it anyway as a belt and suspenders, and to provide treatment, as I mentioned earlier, for the catch basin that will collect the runoff from the top of the parking area. So this site is not suitable really for large more infiltration, which was really part of the reevaluation as construction went on to look a little closer at this, which really created this amendment overall, was to what is the best way to handle runoff on this site. And it's really to get rid of that tennis court
Mhm.
and look for opportunities to manage it on site.
John, Eric here. I think you've advised us what our job is, which is to make sure you're not increasing the flow off the property. You've known that. I've been on for 3 years, and I think you've hit me over the head with it enough that I understand that. What I don't understand is why, after all this work, you're only reducing the overground, all right, in the 100-year storm by about 5%. I would have thought you do much better in the other measures, John. Why is that figure so puny?
Well, again, we're maintaining a paved driveway, which we want to have for maintenance and access and maneuverability at the top of the property. So although we're reducing the amount of impervious overall, it's not dramatic. Where the house is bigger than what was there. We're adding a patio in the back. So there is a balance.
Yeah, I'm talking about the figure overground to the street, because the amount of water that properties shed onto the municipal highways and byways in this town is always a critical issue. And I think even though you don't legally have to do it to get your permit, I think we are all better off if we reduce the amount of runoff from property into the major roads in this type of a community. What concepts could we exploit, falling on what Mary Ann was talking about, to reduce the actual flow under the street from the property? It's only down 4 or 5%. Yeah, there's a lot of time and effort going in, but we're not getting much bang for our buck.
We're being a little conservative with these numbers too. We're not accounting for the infiltration system. We're not plugging that in. That's because it's not required. We're adding that in. I could run these numbers, put the infiltration system in, and those numbers would look a little bit better.
John, would the number of flow onto the street look better, or would it be in other areas that would improve?
Towards the street, because we're running the majority of it toward, we're not sending any down the driveway. We're capturing it at the top and putting it in underground and sending it to the street infrastructure.
I suppose I don't quite understand the concept you're talking about. I see a reduction of about 5%. What you're saying is that that's not a correct figure.
It's
actually gonna be
very
better.
conservative. It's very conservative. A couple things that are not factored into that. One is the pool is considered impervious when in actuality it holds water. There's no runoff that comes off the pool. So that's a large area. There's also the infiltration system that we put in primarily for treatment for the runoff. That's what it's there for primarily. But it also would reduce, if we plug that in as an infiltration system to the model, that would further reduce the amount of runoff. So those two things alone that we're not factoring in to be overly conservative would reduce the number. And again, we're reducing from what's there today. That's the threshold.
John, you're referring to reducing the number. Is the number of runoff under the street from the property, or is it other numbers you're referring to?
It's all essentially running to the street with the system that we're proposing, because we're piping it in that direction for the most part.
Like I said, runoff onto the street is a particularly sensitive number. Are there technologies, some pits you could use to reduce the number by more than 5%?
I can rerun these numbers and it will go down by that, by including the infiltration that is on the plan and the pool that will capture runoff and not send it off-site. What I'm saying to you is that this is a conservative 5%. It's actually more than that.
I think I'd like to see a larger number. That's what concerns me when I look at your numbers that you presented in the March 25th memo.
And with all due respect, it's not, we can just keep saying that, but we're going outside of the law, quite frankly. That's not the stormwater bylaw in the town of Cohasset. We're meeting that threshold.
John, could you elaborate just a little bit more about where that system daylights and does it discharge onto the street, or are you really are you tied directly into that storm drain?
Tying directly into the storm drain.
Yeah, that's great. So in other words, you're not just splashing all that water out on Nichols Road and hope it flows down into the through the grate.
That's correct.
Okay. Could you also elaborate a little bit about the treatment chamber that you talked about? It seems like maybe that's the wrong term. I mean, it's really a silt trap, isn't it?
Well, there's two things. There's a catch basin
Yeah.
that will provide the treatment to separate oil, water, and grit.
Oh, there is an oil separation system there?
Yeah, there'll be a hood in the catch basin.
Okay.
Top. And then that will flow to the infiltration chambers that provide treatment through the stone.
Well, what kind of treatments do the stones give it? I mean,
it further holds and reduces the pollutants by reducing the amount of runoff that's going to come off the site. So that's a type of.
Wait a minute. How does a box full of stones change the water quality? Can you explain that?
Yeah, it creates an opportunity for any pollutants to hold themselves into that and will continue to get diluted with runoff that will sit in those chambers versus putting it into a pipe and running it directly into the catch basin. So it's holding it.
But I mean, there's nothing that's actually treating them. There's nothing that's breaking down, for example, oil or anything else that gets in there. I mean,
that's being the primary treatment is in the catch basin itself. That's the secondary treatment in the stone and sand.
I guess I'm still not following how this works.
It's essentially a stone and sand
I mean,
filter.
is there some sort of oxidation reduction reaction that's going on there? Is there some chemical process going on to degrade any pollutants that might enter this? Or is it, it seems like it's just the sandbox that you're essentially running your water through, which would catch silt certainly and sand, but how it would actually have any impact on any dissolved species, I just don't see that. Maybe you can explain.
That's a type of stormwater treatment system. It's essentially almost does work like a sand filter. It's
I'm sorry, that almost does work like a what?
a sand filter. I mean,
Yeah.
there's stone and sand in this
So
infiltration.
in other words, some of your whatever's dissolved in there is not going to get trapped because it's dissolved in water, right? So sand is not going to filter it out. If it's suspended in water, yes, I could understand how it might be able to filter some of it out. But if it's dissolved in water, it's not. It's just going to pass right through it.
Well, it gets held in the structure, and it gets diluted in the stone of the infiltration.
I mean, I don't expect a lot of stuff to be actually dissolved in the water here. I'm just curious about
I
this
mean, this is
vague
a residential.
notion that something's getting treated here, chemically treated to reduce pollution. And I don't understand the process, how that could happen in a box full of sand.
Is there an alternative kind of system where this has already been built?
The stone, we could increase the amount of infiltration here. We could, again, we're trying to keep things underground to not add more surface flow in any areas.
I understand the hydraulics of this, and it seems like it's a really good system. So don't get me wrong about this, but when I hear a word treatment, that implies that there's some sort of process like a sewer treatment plant.
Well,
And
no, that's not.
I don't see it here.
Yeah, that's not the kind of pollutants though.
No, it's not.
We
I'm
have
using that as an analogy.
No, I know. Well, I think it's a good point though, because part of the stormwater permit requires us to, and the owner, not us, the owner, to sign an illicit discharge statement. I mean, they're bound by this permit that is part of the record for this property. I mean, that's one of the benefits of a stormwater permit. It includes an operation and maintenance plan that stays with the property. It includes an illicit discharge statement which stays with the property. So, you know, homeowners, once they file for one of these permits, now are under a different obligation and awareness of how to perform and operate one of these systems. They're required to maintain it. They're aware of what's on the property. They're going to a great lengths and expense to put these systems. This is a very sophisticated system for a single family home. I mean, this stormwater bylaw is a sophisticated process for single family homes. We are required to model the runoff. These runoff numbers are very large runoff numbers that these homeowners are obligated to manage. I mean, it's a 9-inch, 24-hour rain event in the 100-year storm. 9-inch, 24-hour rain event in a 100-year storm. So these are huge runoff numbers.
This isn't a typical house, though. We have to say when you say it's a house.
This is absolutely a typical house. We're not seeking any relief under the Cohasset zoning bylaw for lot coverage, size, setback. This was the existing house.
How many
This is what was here. This is the existing property.
how many square feet is this? I can't see it on there.
The lot itself.
No, I'm just wondering about the residential area of the house itself. Or even the footprint.
I'm not sure what the existing, again, we're, as it relates.
Looks like a big house to
but
me.
it's a larger than most homes that seem.
It looks like a big house.
It's a large home, like a lot of homes in this neighborhood.
Has it gone through large house review?
Yes, it has. We're talking about an amendment
Okay,
to
so that tells us
stormwater
something
permit.
about.
It was approved in 2019.
I'm not asking
Get
whether it's
back on
approved.
track.
John, I'm not asking whether it's approved. I'm just trying to get some notion of how big it is. So if it's gone through large house review, it's bigger than 3,500 square feet. Right?
Yes, it
That's
is.
all I'm trying to get at.
John, can I just, I understand your contention that the bylaws ask for a reduction, and I understand you've met your burden.
They don't ask for a reduction. They ask for no increase.
All right, fine. I asked for a
That's important.
reduction.
That's important.
I asked for a reduction. Because if you read our bylaws, it talks about all kinds of things like on-site disposal and everything else, and we don't really push that, but we do look for no increase. And I've just acknowledged that to you, John, so don't get pissed at me, all right?
I'm not pissed at anybody.
You're completely pissed off. You showed it through your voice, and now I'm trying to just ask a very simple question.
I'm not upset. I apologize.
There's a swath, well, I am, okay? This happens every fucking week.
Whoa.
Listen,
Come on, guys.
we've got a swath that cuts through this area. I have no idea how big a trench this was. I'd like to recommend, if you think it can help us at all, a break in this grade with potentially a gravel infiltration trench halfway down that grade that might actually infiltrate some of that water that people are concerned about running off the property. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I have seen it done before. It's a completely barren piece of land. It would take all of, a half hour to dig a trench and put gravel in. I don't know what height the electric lines are at. I'm not sure it's even feasible, but I'm just throwing it out there as something that perhaps would further contribute to mitigating the amount of flow from that particular area that I've outlined onto the street, because that is one area that's not getting captured. Well, you might have I take that back. I think I see a manhole right here, don't I? So maybe it's only a smaller portion there.
Chris,
So-
are you talking, Chris?
John, can you comment about how thick the soil is in that area that's been highlighted there between the street and the old tennis court? Is there much soil there?
There's really not a ton of soil across the site, quite frankly.
So there's really no place for the water to readily infiltrate,
Then
unless you
that's all.
construct something.
That's all I wanted. I just thought the whole area had been, trenched out. I thought maybe it was a possibility, but
Well, what is a possibility, Chris, is that when the pipe goes in to the street, that surface can be, we can evaluate the surface for large crushed stone, and to create some areas along running parallel and longitudinal with the contours that will also run perpendicular to the slope. So we could certainly look at that, and I don't want to speak for Sean, but there'll be some stairs that will go down to the street. But certainly we can look for ways to increase. My only, and I apologize if I seem like I was getting upset, but it's more just, I want to make sure that the applicants and all homeowners are held to sort of the same standard. And that's really what all I ever want, is that we go by the law and that we follow the law. But there's always opportunity to exceed this. And that's really part of this application. But can we look to exceed it even further? Yes, we can. And I think we can work with Sean and to look for ways on site to address areas that would potentially run flow in that area that you're talking about, because it will be restored. It'll be a lot of native grasses. There are some trees that are going in that area, as Sean mentioned, but we can certainly, I think we've gone above and beyond on the other side of the property, because that was really the big concern on the first pass at this, by, you know, getting rid of that tennis court and trying to bring everything on site. But now what we're talking about is looking even further at the Nichols Road area to identify some opportunities to increase infiltration. And that does also provide treatment to a degree. But sure, we can look to do that. But again, that would be above and beyond what we're required to do. And
We understand that.
state publicly that we will endeavor to do that without a hesitation. I know Helen and Rick are anxious to keep things moving. Quite frankly, we thought that the removal of the tennis court was a good thing, that it would be looked at very favorably. But they really want to just keep things moving. And so I think I'll speak for them and say that we'll continue to work in that regard.
Chris, are you suggesting a driveway trench system by that?
No, I'm not. I'm not anywhere near the driveway. I'm talking about the area where it was disturbed for the electric line. There's a major slope right here. And if anything can be done to help intercept the water as it goes down, I think it could be a great positive. I think that, as I've mentioned, this area here and this area where, you know, here needs some serious vegetation. And those are the two items that I think possibly could really help this project. And,
I think that could be done.
neither of which are required, but they are I highly recommend them.
Yeah. I think that's possible to do, Chris. I don't think that's an issue at all, especially if it was obviously going to be vegetated, but if we can do another, to John's point, if there's something else we could do, perhaps capture some of that water with some crushed stone that would be within that planting area that we're already going to be planting. And then the area that's disturbed, to your point, coming straight down from the house to the street, that area, if we're revegetating that, we can do it at the same time. Yeah, it's the same, shouldn't be an issue at all.
Jeff, is there anyone in the audience who's raised their hand or has asked to comment on this?
No.
Okay.
I will say that we did meet with the downstream abutters last week to go over the plan with them. They had asked us some questions, and we offered to go out and meet with them in person and walk the site and explain the plan with them, and they appreciated that.
Does anyone else have any further comments? Jeff, this would just be a motion for an amendment to stormwater permit, is that correct?
Yes.
And does it carry it? Would it carry an order of condition if we're just for what we're asking, or do we just? It's not really an order of condition because we're not conditioning it. We're recommending it. It's an order of recommendation. Would someone like to make a motion to amend?
Would you like us, Mary Ann Weatherall would make a motion to recommend,
To amend.
at 130 Nichols Road that we
Amend.
we amend the plan, and that we will add, you'll have to add in what you are strongly.
Well, I think what we're doing is the motion is to amend the stormwater permit 1923 at 130 Nichols Road. And that the applicant has agreed to make some modifications to help reduce runoff where possible. And that plan can be shared with our conservation agent, you know, at some point.
Okay.
All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, having heard a motion and a second to amend the stormwater permit 1923 at 130 Snickle Road, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eisner, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherall,
Aye.
and Chris McFarland, aye. That passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate your
Thank you.
input
Thank
this
you.
evening.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Jeff Summers, thank you so much for everything you've been doing. So we're gonna hate to see you go, okay?
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Without a doubt, you've been a tremendous asset, both as a resident and a professional in this community. I can't commend you and thank you enough for all of your great work and service to the town.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Our next hearing is NOI 21-17 and stormwater permit 2116 for 502 South Main Street. This is a renovation and new construction continued from April 8th, 2021.
So I just promoted Rebecca. She's the landscape architect. I'm not sure if Rebecca, can you tell me who else?
John Zimmer should be
Yeah, I got John.
Okay, that's it. Tim Power couldn't be with us today.
Okay.
So, thank you for having us. I think John was going to run the show for us to get you updated. There's John.
All right. Good to go?
Yes, hi, John.
All right, good evening. John Zimmer with South River Environmental. Tim Power sent his apologies. Apparently he'd rather be in Disney than on a conservation meeting tonight. I don't know
I
why.
didn't tell him where he was.
If you'd like, I can share my screen and we can go over
Good idea.
what was changed from the last hearing.
Thank you.
All right, can folks see that?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Okay, at the initial hearing we had on April 8th, Tim went over the plans for raising and rebuilding an existing residence in this portion of the property and then subdividing the lot and constructing a second residence to the north. He went over all of the stormwater management system, which includes underground infiltration chambers, as well as a rain garden in this area. One of the comments that I think Chris had made was the recommendation to put a little hammerhead in by the garage for the ability to turn cars around and not have to back all the way down the driveway. So that was included. And the other significant change was, I think, Eric's comment to the size of the plantings for the mitigation plantings. They were all fairly small, and the recommendation was to increase those in size. So now we have done so, and the smallest tree size that we're proposing is 4 to 6 feet. The majority of them are 2 to 3 inch caliper and upwards of 10 to 12 feet. I think there's a total of 21 trees that are now proposed for mitigation, as well as shrubs throughout. I think it's going to be within the 50 or within the 50 to 100, whichever the commission would prefer. We did also discuss the potential for some restoration within the 50, because I'm not sure if folks have been out to the site or not, but there's a lot of debris and fill that's remaining from the previous owners that remains in the 50-foot buffer. So I think there's the ability to do some restoration in there as well that would improve the ability of the buffer to protect the wetland. Those were really the main points that we wanted to touch on. If you have specific questions on the planting plan, Rebecca could address those, but I mean, other than that, happy to entertain any other questions that you may have.
John, could you tell me what will happen to the invasives that you have listed in your in the memo here? From you have some Japanese knotweed and things like that clearly you'd like to get rid of. I assume you'll take care of those.
Yeah, that would be the plan. I mean, certainly within the portions of the site to be developed, that will all be removed. And then within the 50-foot buffer, we would certainly try to control those as well, preferably without the use of herbicides if we can. It's really difficult to do it that way. If we did need to use herbicides, it would be done by a licensed professional with a stem treatment and not a broadcast. I'm not sure what your typical requirements are, but in other towns, that's typically how we've addressed the use of herbicides, is not to use any type of foliar spray, but to do basically a cut and stem application.
Yeah, John, I think our attitude toward the use of herbicides in the 50-foot areas is not to allow it. And if you wanted to proceed that way, you would have to come with us with a plan, and we'll discuss it, right? I can't say we'd be very positive about it, but at least it'd be something which we would discuss with you, all right?
Sure. No, and I agree 100%. So if we could condition, physical removal of invasives, I mean, that would probably be the better way to go right up front.
Yeah, I've been through there. I didn't find a lot of invasives in the 50-foot buffer zone. There are some there, and I think you can control them by hand. One of the finest ways to get rid of knotweed and others is just to continually whack at it. Once every 2 months for 2 or 3 years, a bit of work, and they'll eventually disappear. So,
agreed.
Sort of spraying.
Yep. Sure. Absolutely. And if you want to build that in as a condition for hand removal and, through the life of the conditions, that's fine as well.
There's no clause that says you're responsible for the cleanup of the pollutants of past owners, but we certainly would expect that an owner who is properly managing their buffer zone would pick up the old paint can and the wrapper and the trash and all that, and leave it in as healthy a form as possible from an environmental viewpoint.
I agree 100%. And at the end of the day, the owner wants to sell these 2 lots. And if there are paint cans and other things lying around, it's not in their best interest. So I think that they would be good stewards of the land.
Okay.
I was just curious, on the second house in the back where the new leach field is, was that where there was an old beech tree approximately there and an ancient oak tree? Is that being removed? Because I couldn't really tell from the existing conditions versus the
right. The beech tree, there's a clump of beech trees that's here, that's this area. That beech tree is going to stay. There are a couple of larger diameter. I think there's a couple of large red oaks. One has multiple stems that would be removed, and those are within the 50 to 100. And I think there's one that's actually outside the 100.
And are those staying or being removed?
There are a couple of the larger ones are being removed. They're right, kind of in this area, and then there's one right down in here.
And how many of those are being removed then?
I believe there's two of the larger caliper trees.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And Marianne, you're saying those do not show up on the existing condition plan?
They do now.
I
I believe
on
the
the
initial.
on the plan that I had, the existing plans that I had before, I couldn't tell if it was there or not because everything's so lightly drawn, or maybe it printed out from my document.
Okay.
But I just wanted to address it if I had seen it. But you say there's only 2 trees coming down.
Right, I believe can you guys see this plan now?
Mature
We
tree.
did.
Okay, great. There's a 36-inch pine here, a 36-inch elm, which I think is mislabeled. That should be an oak. And then there's a 48-inch pine there. So those are the main ones that would be. Wait, that's in the 50, so that would stay. So it's mainly the 36-inch fir, 36-inch oak, and then there's a 24-inch oak there. And this clump here that is the beech trees that you had spoken about.
So the 12-inch birch, the 12-inch oak, and the other 12-inch oak, and the 56-inch oak are all staying?
No, those will be removed as well.
So
I was just speaking to the larger ones. The 56-inch oak is outside the 100.
With the concrete pad that you say there, what is it like when you're out on the property? It's concrete?
Yeah, it's just a remnant concrete pad that was there. Maybe it was a dog kennel at one time, but that would be removed.
Okay, so the house is behind the concrete pad, looking at this drawing. At this
Right, looking at this drawing, the house is in this area right here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So there'll be hand removal of all the trash as well, and the tires that you're talking about as well.
Yes.
And another thing, I just wanted to be clear, are you using the existing driveway as the new driveway? There's a driveway that goes to the right of the current little house, and then it travels to a house in back. Are you using that driveway and then splintering off from it, or you're establishing a new driveway?
Let me just double check here between the two plans. So there's an existing driveway that basically has this little circular
Right.
bump out.
No,
So
there's a driveway to the right.
Right, so they'll use the existing curb cut for the new driveway.
Which is to the right of the north.
Correct. So see this right here?
Mm-hmm.
That's the existing driveway. So that it's oriented differently, but they're going to use the existing curb cut and basically discontinue that other circular part and remove all the pavement that's there.
Right.
And then the house in the back. I think she's asking if the house in the back is going to have a separate driveway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yes, there will be a separate curb cut.
So if we look at the macro view of this, where's the other driveway?
There's another driveway right next to the proposed driveway.
So where
To
does
the
that
right
line
of
up?
it.
Okay, so this driveway here is the existing curb cut,
Mm-hmm.
and then there'll be a second curb cut at the edge of the lot.
And then I think she's asking, the next house has its own driveway on the right side of the property line.
I believe so. I don't know that I have.
Left side.
I don't know if we have anything that shows.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's shown.
I'm just curious, is that driveway right next to your own driveway? Because then that's two driveways, two pervious or impervious driveways right next to each other on a property.
Right, it may be, but the vast majority of that driveway is located outside the 100. I mean, there's a little piece here that's within the 100 right towards the end of it. But I mean, aside without getting an easement or some other alternative access agreement with the abutting landowner, they're hamstrung to some degree with access. And we didn't want to propose it over here because then it would be within the 50-foot.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to make a note to Mike Aarons is the owner of the property. I just promoted. I didn't realize he was here. I promoted him to panelist. If Mike, if you have any comments, go ahead.
At this point, I don't have any comments. I was jumping in to speak about the driveways being next to each other. There is a large diameter tree in between the two driveways that we were trying to save. It's on the abutters property. So that's why we were not trying to merge, but also that existing driveway to the right of our proposed is already an easement driveway to the property in the back, and they have an exclusive easement. So that would have to be broken, which I don't think can be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So could we have a look at the landscape plan?
Is there anything in particular you'd like to zoom in on?
Just a general overview would be nice, but I'll tell you where I'm coming from. A very quick look at that existing condition showed at least 7 fairly sizable trees. I mean, 3 were at 12 inch and then 24, 56, 30 something. And those are all sitting within between the 50 and the 100-foot buffer. So I'd like to see what's being proposed to kind of
Mitigate for those.
replace those. Yeah.
Okay, Rebecca, would you like to go over the plan, please?
Sure. For the record, Rebecca Bashand, RBLA Design. I'm a registered landscape architect helping out with this project. And because they're single family homeownership, we really wanted to keep the palette fairly limited because we anticipate that the homeowner will want to do their own landscaping in addition to what we put. So that's why you'll see that a lot of the disturbed area is simply a clean slate of lawn for them to work with. We did propose the 2 rain gardens with a rain garden palette of seed and a mix of shrubs and perennials. That'll be native and tolerant of getting wet feet. And everything on the list, I believe, pretty much comes from, they're all definitely native, and they primarily come from the Cohasset South Shore native plant list from your website. And we proposed 2 large American elms and a large river birch within the residential area, and then the rain garden plantings, and then within the mitigation buffer zone plantings. That's where John mentioned earlier, we increased the size pretty dramatically of what we were showing before. So now we're showing 3 2 to 2.5 inch red maples, 3 8 to 10 foot clump river birch, some Atlantic white cedar, 3 white pines, 3 ash, and 3 pin oak, and then a mix of native shrubs to kind of infill this area, which we feel we'll just field locate those with John after the cleanup and the invasive removal. So I think that'll just, let us interweave and then not affect the existing trees that are out there.
Rebecca, given the disease issue with American elms, I'm just curious, why would you recommend those?
Because now we have some newer cultivars that are actually doing pretty well. So we had chosen that. I had red maples at first, but when we decided to put those out in the 50, 100 foot, I noticed the American elms on your list and thought we could go with one of the Princeton or Heritage elms.
If the people I talk to certainly would not give the American elm a clean bill of health now. And there's so many other trees on our list you could substitute. I would think I would stay away from the American elms myself, and I would go with one of the other deciduous trees that we have on our list that are clear winners from a disease viewpoint. All right.
That's fine. We could do that as well. I was just trying to make it a little more special since we had the red maple elsewhere. And I have a personal vendetta against oaks because they seem to drop something on my house every day. So, but we're happy to look at another species.
All right. But the American elm certainly has not been given a clear go ahead by anyone in the horticultural area right now. They still are susceptible to disease in an unfortunate way. Now, if you go to the European and the Japanese elms, that's another thing, but they're not native species.
Right. Yeah, I can easily make that change.
Rebecca, what size are these trees that you're putting in, such as if it's not the American elm, what size might they be? I guess I am concerned that you're taking down this 2 ancient oak trees. I mean, they look like they're in good condition on the lot.
Yeah, so as shown on the plant list on the landscape plan, we have 2.5 to 3 inch caliber deciduous shade trees, a 10 to 12 foot height river birch. So as I said, right now we just have the 3 in the residential area, and then down in the mitigation zone, we have 3 2 to 2.5 inch red maple, 3 8 to 10 foot height clump river birch, 3 4 to 6 foot height Atlantic white cedar, 3 4 to 6 foot height white pine, 3 4 to 6 foot height white ash, and 3 2 to 2.5 inch caliber pin oak, with about 3 dozen 2 foot height native shrubs.
Those aren't located on your plan though, are they?
No, that's what I was saying. We will field locate them with John Zimmer as we do the invasive species removal. That way we won't impact the existing trees that are out there we don't have survey really showing what the understory might be. If there's something of value, we don't want to just, put a shrub on something that's good and have someone not thinking rip out a great, native species.
So these would all have to be hand planted. There'd be no machinery into the 50-foot buffer with these.
Right.
Okay.
Rebecca, I think maybe I missed your discussion on this. All the large trees, more than 18 inches, they're coming down because of the development work you're going to do?
Yes.
They have to come down because of roads or buildings or construction. They're not coming down because you think these trees are not needed or not wanted on a new property like this.
Right. I would definitely, I'm always in favor of keeping trees, but because of the underground,
I just wanted to make sure. That's great.
yeah, that's unfortunately because of the underground stormwater and septic.
Yeah.
We have, that limits us a lot, and it has such an impact to dig that much near the root systems of the trees that, but that is also shown, the tree removals are shown on the landscape plan now as well.
All right.
Can you go to your plan again, please? Yeah, don't go out too far though, please. So the X's represent the removals?
Yes.
What size are those? Are those, Rebecca?
They range, they're, anywhere from, I think the surveyor actually picked up 4-inch and higher. So they're, 4, 8, 12-inch, and then the few really large ones that John mentioned.
So I think that's where I have an ancient oak, I have a black birch, which I agreed to take, I thought was recommended to take down. I had an old beech tree and a stand of beech in that area. It just seemed like a lot.
Yeah, and that's
I think that's
unfortunately because of the, a lot of them are located in the septic systems for the houses. So that's why they're being removed.
I'd like to see some more trees put back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a 56-inch, or at least as labeled as a 56-inch, which is quite a tree.
Right.
I don't.
But there were some of the larger trees that were multiple trunked, and I think when the surveyor was out there, they just kind of wrapped around all of the trunks and called it a 56. But there are definitely some sizable trees out there.
I only saw one tree that had 3 trees attached to one trunk. The rest of them were single trunk, large, very mature trees. So I would like to see some trees replaced. Not, of course, in the septic system, but on the property.
I think that's exactly why we added more larger trees, because that's what was said in the last meeting. And we represented that with Rebecca coming forth in this meeting. So you're asking for additional more than the last meeting?
I think that would be recommended, yes.
2,
Is
4,
there a
6.
threshold you're looking for? I didn't see any mitigation requirements in your bylaw.
I'm sorry, before we answer that, can you slide down the page? I know my dots aren't going to move with you, but the other direction.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to try to see what we had. Sorry, I'm going to clear this. I had 13 up until some point. I don't think we had 14,
So it's 50 foot, and then
15, 16, 17.
but yes, several of those are outside of the 100-foot buffer. So this one, this one are all outside the 100. These two.
No, we understand.
Okay.
Chris, is that you putting the
It was me putting the dots down.
I didn't know where they came from.
And it's me messing them all up after he put them on there. Sorry.
No, I had put them down. I had put them on, and then of course when the page moves, they don't move with it. So, but I believe I counted, even though some of them are outside the 100-foot buffer, I counted 18 trees that are coming down. If you know, if you gave us a, you know, if we said 2/3 of those are within the 100 to the 50, I mean, I think that's a fair number for what we'd want to see. Well, you're pretty close to that, I'd say, right?
Yeah. I
Rebecca?
think there's a total of 21 trees being proposed.
21. Okay,
Right.
so you're pretty good then. Lucky for you, you're not.
18 coming down and 21 being replaced.
I believe it was 23, isn't it, Rebecca? Going
Oh,
back?
you're putting me on the spot. So add here. Wait a second. 3, 6,
I believe it was
12,
23
15,
weeks.
18, 21.
21. So yeah, and that's what we heard in the last meeting. And that's why we added more trees and larger trees.
Well, lucky
And
for
a
you, you're
lot of
not
them
in
are pretty
Cambridge.
quick growing. Cambridge is a very thorough replacement bylaw, mitigation bylaw, but we
Inch
did
per
choose
inch.
some-
You'd only have to plant probably 150 trees out here.
Well, as Rebecca said, a lot of these trees are quick growing and they're going to be large trees. So you also, if you go too clustered, you're going to start, something's going to lose in the end. Something's not going to survive. We have a large overgrowth in the wetlands as well that's shading the lot. So we also have to take that in consideration.
Right, you are keeping the pine, that's in the 50, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, nothing's being proposed to be cut in the 50.
Rebecca, you said
Just-
that Cambridge has what kind of plan?
Cambridge's mitigation bylaw is pretty strict and to the point. And
It's an inch
Inch per
replacement
inch.
for every inch you remove.
Oh, I want to see that.
or you pay you pay a fee into if you can't fit the trees on your property, they have a very specific payment plan.
Maybe that's what we need. Could you give us a copy of that, Rebecca?
I know.
On,
that's
it's
what-
definitely on Cambridge's website.
What's that?
That's what I like to hear, profit making.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if any of the participants saw this, but Mike Ahern is on the meeting if anyone's interested. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions and concerns?
It's the usual thing, Chris. We're losing hundreds of inches of trees and we're going to put back around 25, but you know, that always hurts, but there's no way around that, Chris. So, you know, you have to live.
I would hazard to say that, yes, you are putting back trees, but they took 100 years to get to hundreds of inches. And we're putting back 21 trees that'll get to hundreds of inches, probably much sooner than the previous trees did.
Not in my life.
No.
Well,
So
probably not in my life either, but
probably not a good argument right now.
And today's Earth Day, so in celebration of that, I'd probably like a little more trees. Like, so.
Okay.
All right. And we have no comments, Jeff, from doesn't look like we have any other comments.
No.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion for an order of conditions?
Marianne Weatherall would like to make a motion to issue an order of conditions for 502 North Main Street. And this is a, sorry.
No, that's it for NOI 2117.
NOI, that's what it is. Thank you.
Yep. I think the only real order of conditions we heard is Eric's recommendation against the American Elm.
I'd also like to add, Chris, that as a condition that they make sure there's a cleanup of the 50-foot buffer zone. All right. And that if they want to come in and remove any invasives through chemical means, they come forward with a plan that we have to approve. If you think that's necessary.
That's great. That's great. So we'll add that to Mary Ann's motion. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Having heard a motion in a second to, was that something? No. Having heard a motion in a second to issue an order of conditions for NOI 2117 at 502 South Main Street, I'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marion Weatherall,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That passes 5-0. We also need a variance. I'll make a motion to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer for the cleanup and mitigation planting, which shall all be done by hand. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Having heard a motion and a second for a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marion Weatherall,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0. We also, I'm going to make a motion for the stormwater permit 21-16 at 502 South Main Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard a motion, a second to issue a stormwater permit 2116 at 502 South Main Street. We'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marion Weatherall,
Marion Weatherald, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0. Thank you.
If I could just interrupt you, I don't know if it matters for the record, it's 502 North Main Street. Not
Thank you.
south.
Oh, it says
Sorry.
now, but
Sorry,
yes.
I have a typo on my,
No problem, I just want for the record.
thank you. We'll change all that. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Oh,
Good
wait,
luck,
can I
Jeff.
just ask a quick question? Do you have an approved subdivision of this?
A what?
An approved subdivision?
Yes, their subdivision was pre-recorded and approved by Town of Cohasset.
They talked about that last week or at the last meeting, Chris.
I didn't remember. That's all. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Jeff, I wanna wish you well in your future endeavors.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll miss you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you
care.
all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Our next hearing is a notice of public hearing. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaws, the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaws, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, April 22nd, 2021 at 6:30 via remote participation on a Zoom platform from applicants Mareka Birdson, Dan Rose, and Elizabeth Graham for notice of intent 21-18 for an ecological restoration project on a coastal bank at 589 and 595 Jerusalem Road.
So I actually don't see Miss Bernston or Steve Ivis is the wetland scientist who is doing this project. I don't see either of them.
There is a phone.
attendees.
There's a phone number. Do we know who that is?
I don't know who that is.
Can we check?
Well, I'll just make this statement. If either Miss Bernstein or Steve Ivis are in the attendees, if they could raise their hand, then I can promote them to participant.
There's someone's hand. It just went up. It says Zoom 5, Zoom 5.
Yep.
Zoom 5, you're muted.
Hi, this is Steve Ivis. I'm going to try to get my camera on as well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can
Very
see
good.
you also, Steve.
What's that?
We can see you also.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's the idea. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members and staff. My name is Steve Ivis, Ivis Environmental in Norwell. I'm here for Ms. Bernstein, Mr. Rose, and Ms. Graham. This is a continuation of the project that was started 2 years ago, so far successful. And I hope you've taken at least a partial look at some of the materials. We've gone through the correct process finally, we have a DEP file number. It was noticed in the Environmental Monitor on the 10th of March. All green cards and certificates of mailing have been forwarded. And we are 2 weeks late due to an error in the public notice for 8th of April. And everyone, happy Earth Day. And garlic mustard is now blooming. Okay, so I have recommended to my clients that they start removing the garlic mustard because it probably will seed before your next meeting.
I crawled around in my hands, excuse me, I crawled around in my hands and knees all day yesterday, pulling that crap out.
Thank you. The world thanks you, sir.
I've already done mine, Steve, along with the poison ivy.
Very good, very good. Excellent, excellent. Glad to hear it. So this is a pretty complicated picture. Do you have any questions? Let me ask you that first.
Steve, can I recommend one thing?
Mhm.
And do with it as you see fit. This whole area of ecological NOIs, restoration NOIs.
Yes.
It's a very different procedure with different assumptions. It might be worthwhile if you just spend 5 or 10 minutes explaining to the commission how it's different from what we normally do, because the standards and the procedures are quite different. And we don't have much background.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Let me go to my performance standard discussion on coastal banks first. And there's a series of performance standards for coastal work on coastal banks, okay? And then there's another series of standards for ecological restorations on coastal banks, all right? So let me go through some of that with you if you don't mind. We've got to demonstrate that the project complies with all applicable provisions of 310 CMR 10.24, paragraph 1 through paragraph 6 and paragraph 9 and 10, okay? So let me go through some of them. Paragraph 1, if the issuing authority determines that a resource area is significant to an interest identified in 13140, for which no presumption is stated in the preamble to the applicable section, the issuing authority shall impose such conditions as are necessary to contribute to the protection of such interests, okay? Acceptable to the applicant, all right? And there's a number of these conditions must comply with requirements of federal, state, and local statutes. Resource area is not significant to an interest, also acceptable. Sites, number 5, sites requirements inside an ACEC. The site is not inside the ACEC, and in fact, you probably saw an information piece from Marine Fisheries that said, oh, well, we're going to give you a time of year operational stop because you're working in waters. Well, that's not true. They're not working in waters, okay? Procedures, more procedures, a lot of procedures, okay?
Steve, maybe a bit of an overview, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've gone back and done a considerable amount of reading of what's going on in Nantucket with the restoration NOIs there against Phragmites. And what I picked up, Steve, was that the restoration, ecological restoration were put into place, what, 7 or 8 years ago, Steve?
Yes, about that time, yes.
7 or 8 years ago, to deal with man-made projects that have gone awry, all right? It's a bridge, it's a dam, it's things in the resource area that our rules prohibit us from doing much about. Invasive species management. We were prohibited from going in there and doing anything. So the restoration NOIs came about as a way for the Concoms and the conservation groups to tackle very noticeable problems, which we felt our hands tied in doing before. Is that
exactly? Yes.
Yeah. So
thank you.
It opens up going in and to a resource area and doing work which we normally wouldn't be able to do, sometimes with chemicals, sometimes without, all right, in defense of the common good, which is the future of the resource area. And the one I'm referring to, it's very common in what's going on in Nantucket, where they're being invaded by Phragmites.
Yes.
Every year, the brackish water ponds are becoming smaller and smaller, and they looked to the future and saw them disappearing unless they did something. So they become a big movement in the ecological area in order to control their Phragmites, and apparently it's working very well. So I'll shut up now.
Sure. And so the proposal here is to continue changing the coastal bank in front of 589 and a portion of 595 Jerusalem Road to a native natural bank, having native species that belong there, and improving wildlife habitat, cover, foodstuffs, overwintering, etc. The way that it has been done so far, all by hand, removing the invasive materials and replacing with non-invasive native plants. It's been very successful for 2 years now that's been running. About a third of the coastal bank is complete at this location at 589, which would be the easterly side of the coastal bank in front of 589 Jerusalem Road. And we have proposal for continuing the same program onward to the west. Figure 7 in my package there of 59 pages worth of ecological restoration details
Can you pull
shows
that
you.
up?
I'm sorry.
I'm asking Jeff to pull it up unless you can do it, Steve.
I have it on my screen. Jeff would have to go to my screen, I guess, and ask for my screen to be.
No, you would have to.
You
would have
can
to go
share
to
your
the
screen,
bottom
Steve.
and share your screen.
Okay, and where do I share my screen?
At the bottom of all our faces there, if you move your cursor around, you'll see something that says share screen.
Excellent, thank you very much. And can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Sure. So this is a compendium of all the existing good plantings and proposed plantings with their approximate locations. Took us hours to put this together, of course, with very different colors for everything. So the easterly side is very close to the stairway over here. And the westerly side is on 595 Jerusalem Road. We don't have a location for the boundary line, I'm sorry to say. Okay. But you can go out there and see what's existing on that site right now. You've got a lot of staghorn sumacs in this area. And then if I bring this other one over, the dark blue are living black locusts. There's some living staghorn sumacs, the green, and the dark blue are all what we want to get rid of, including, there's other invasives, garlic mustard, mugwort, and the multiflora rose, of course. And we like to put back what you see here. Do I have any questions?
Steve, could you tell me can you move your little hand back and forth and tell us where the end of the riprap is?
End of the riprap. Are you talking right next to the pond?
So where your hand is the pond. Now, what about at the top of the bank?
Top of the bank is right here.
But it's not shaped like that.
The planting area is shaped like that. It is. It's shaped very similar to that.
So we're only talking about the north end, is that correct?
This is the north end here.
Okay.
And it's about 60 feet. Let me think, it's 20 feet this way, and it's about 60 feet on this line here. So this goes right back to probably even with almost even with the garage, the stairs. You know where the stairs are going down?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is probably even with the stairs going down or thereabouts. How's that? Okay, going down to the lawn. This area is lawn and rain garden right in here where my cursor is at this location. In fact, I can probably show it to you over here a little bit better. That's that area right in here. And here, actually, here is the rain garden right in here, I believe. Yep. If that assists.
Steve, are you going to retain those staghorn sumacs?
Yes, absolutely. Why not? It's fantastic.
Are they a native?
Yes.
Yes.
They're very good wildlife food too.
These are the ones that have a great big red crest on them in fall?
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And they actually, if you find a bunch of them around, it's amazing. You'll see a very large one in the middle, and then you'll see many, many root suckers.
Oh, yeah.
Around them.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how they grow on the highways.
Yeah. That's how they take over the world.
Indeed. I have some in my yard too, and I'm letting them grow.
Steve, I'm having a little bit of problems with your drawing. The drawing that we're looking at right now, where is the house where number 10 is about? Where the condo building?
Yes, that's correct. This right here, number 10. Yes,
Oh,
right.
no, I guess at the top of the page, there's a 10. Right, the stop, right there. Is that where the condo is?
No, that's the edge of the water.
That's right. This is the edge of the water. This is the pond here.
Okay.
And this is where, well, if you go a little further to the east, over on this side, this is where the staircase down is. Okay. Let me show it to you over here. This is where the staircase down is, right in here. Okay. So we're looking at a section of the land, which is from about here over to here somewhere. You see this large tree here?
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. It's sort of like an L.
And unlike past projects submitted to us of this property of, I think it was 595, we are now adding 589.
No, it was 589, and then we're adding just a little bit along the boundary. We don't know where the boundary is, so in order to do that, in order to take some of these away, the locusts, we are calling for part of these maybe on 595. These right here.
How do we not know the boundary line? Like, why?
It hasn't been. It wasn't surveyed for this project.
Oh.
Okay, simple as that. Simple as that.
Steve, what is the, paint us a picture, please, of the final outcome of this project?
The final outcome,
yes,
is basically you see you have some pines here and some red cedars here, and you've got a number of small shrubs in this area, and then you've got a whole bunch of bearberry and other small grasses, blue stems and goldenrods and plugs of asters and sumacs. So the idea is to cover all possible strata, layers of this site, except near the top of the bank with trees and plantings and shrubs, okay? So there are, for example, in this area here, there are 25 bearberry going in. There are 20 goldenrods going in this area. There's 10 seaside goldenrods going in this area. So what we'd like to do is cover the ground surface so there's no bare soil available for erosion or sedimentation down into the pond, and then have a structure of shrubs at eye height, for example, that are hard to see through for wildlife habitat, etc. And then the pines and the cedars a little bit higher, an overstory, to create an overstory. The overstory will probably never reach the top of the bank, or very high above the top of the bank. because of the winds. So basically coverage of all possible soil when you're looking at it from an aerial standpoint. That's what the idea is. That's
Well,
what
right now, you probably couldn't see any soil from an aerial standpoint anyway, because it's a giant riprap bank.
I'd like to, say no. It's not a riprap bank. It's a rubble bank with lots of invasives, so you can't see the soil because of the invasives. But if you look underneath the invasives, there are portions of the area that are open. It's open soil underneath the invasives.
Well, not a lot of open soil.
Please go take a look. Please go take a look. I would say 50%.
Steve?
Yes.
I've been out there more times than I care to mention. Okay.
Okay.
So please, I mean, you might find it to be wonderful soil pockets, but I'm not. I mean, the city of Boston requires 800 cubic feet of soil for every tree you put in the ground, and I doubt you have 800 square feet of soil out there in total. So please don't tell me how much soil's out there. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, primarily, and it's not rubble either. It's actually large boulders that were put in there, and probably the worst treatment of a bank we've ever seen. And as you mentioned, or you made very clear in your letter, the worst positioning or the worst acceptance of positioning of trees along an upper bank.
Absolutely.
I think what we're here trying to decide today is whether or not you can stake your reputation on the fact that there is going to be a thriving native ecosystem on this bank within a reasonable period of time, or is it just a crapshoot?
Yes, I would like to stake my reputation on that, sir, and I'll give you the east side of the site to look at today. That's successful. It's absolutely successful.
Can you tell me how many plants were planted on the east side?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information at my
Can you
hand.
tell me how many
Actually,
survived
yes.
this last winter?
One moment. I can tell you how many plants were planted on that site. Okay, it's in one of my exhibits, if I can find it. Okay. This winter, there was one tree that didn't make it through. That to me is pretty successful.
But the perennials haven't even started to grow. How can you tell if they survived or not?
They had survived through one winter, the last winter as well.
And can you tell me what the overall coverage of ground, the overall ground area is?
On the east side?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cannot do that because I haven't been out there recently.
Hold on one second, Chris. I've been down there. I was just down there today, and I looked on the east side, and I was never a favorite of this project. I think my being against it probably is well noted in the records. But I must say there is a lot of growth taking place on the eastern side of the bank that we're talking about, Chris. Is it premature? Maybe, but there's a lot of things coming up now. You can see the shoots and the buds coming up on the perennials. Things are coming alive there. Is it going to be what we dreamed of a year ago? I can't say that yet, but it appears to be moving in a positive path toward being filled in with the materials that we've had them put in the past 12 months. So maybe it's the wrong time of year to judge it, but I'm quite optimistic given what I saw today, Chris. So
it's Exhibit C that shows the list of plantings. And we had 24 plus 46 bearberry. We had little blue stem of 3. We had 10 northern bayberry, 7 pink tick seed, 6 purple love grass, 7 red columbine, 28 sweet fern, 6 switchgrass. Then we'll go to the shrubs and trees, 7 beach plums, a crab apple, a choke cherry, 10 eastern red cedars, 2 pin oaks, 1 red maple, 3 sea myrtle, and 1 silver maple. And also present at non-invasive volunteers are oxeye daisies, New England asters, seaside goldenrod, and wild geraniums. So that's the list.
Dad, I was at the property a few days ago. It's not as robust as I would have liked to have seen, but I think Eric makes a good point that the season hasn't fully started enough that to see the growth explode in the way that I would like.
Oh, Marianne, if you look at my perennial border, it looks like it's in the depth of winter now. It's a bit soon, I think. You see
Right.
the-
Well, that's what I agree with. It's not where I'd like to see it, but it's probably not the right season to fully observe it. But this has been a slow, careful, and we've carefully watched this project. I think we were in section 3, I think. So I'm just curious about what we're doing here now. I don't think we were finished with section 3 when we last spoke. Weren't we holding off on that?
That's exactly, well, this is section 3. This is section 3. That's what section 3 is all about, as I understand. I'm sorry, I
Okay,
wasn't.
so if this is section 3, then why are we
This is
adding in
section,
another?
this is section 3, B, and C.
Thank you.
But why are we looking at section 3 with a joint property next to it? I just feel like we should finish what we have in front of us before we add on.
The boundary, well, what we are finished with everything to this section. The boundary is just, it's within a couple of feet here. We just don't know exactly where it is. That's all. And we'd like to take away some of the locusts right along the boundary here. That's the reason for the boundary issue. That's why we got the folks next door to say, yes, please, we'd like to do that.
It's been expanded so they can get all of the black locust. If they
Exactly.
expand a few feet to the neighboring property, they run the chance of finishing this project and leaving the black locust on the border that comes back in.
Right.
So,
And we don't want to leave those poisonous trees on the site. Incredibly poisonous for pets and people.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
It's just a difficult plan to look at for me. It's not traditional.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how I could have improved it, frankly.
Well, you probably could have taken photographs and actually used real data to locate your plants, but
I'm sorry, I don't understand how to do that. Could you explain?
well, I mean, if you went out there in the winter, you can pretty much see right down to the ground. You could take photographs and use photographs as a base map, or you could actually have a base map drawn that located every rock and every planting pocket.
I see, okay. We didn't locate the planting pockets because that's something that we have to find once the invasives are out of there. That's the issue with the planting pockets, which was done on the east side. That's exactly how the east side was done and how it's successful today. So we'd like to just continue the program. The same way, everything done by hand. Removing of, I suggested that I would like to try to get at least an approval tonight to start removing the garlic mustard immediately, if not sooner. And then probably try to close this hearing tonight as well, so we can actually start thinking about removing the invasives, all the rest of the invasives.
Well, I'm going to make a couple comments. I've never I've never really been in favor of this project because I felt that the applicant has always tried to kind of push us down the commission's throat. It's why it's here as a NOI instead of as a RDA that it had been in the past. We've always asked for a bit of time to see better how things were improving. And it's always been a little bit of a negative for this project in the fact that there was a level of impatience that just didn't want to kind of slow this down. I think this project continues to be a kind of a bit of a chance. We don't know on, we don't even if what's been successful for a winter or 2 winters has done well, what the end product's going to be is still a question. There's an amazing amount of plant material here, which I think is wonderful plant material. I think it doesn't mimic any particular native ecosystem. It seems to be a let's put everything in and see what happens, and that's how I kind of view this project. I think that there have been many projects in the buffer where the removal of material, whether native or non-native, has always been looked at very carefully, and for some reason on this particular project, which is presented in purely a emotional way and not a scientific way, somehow gets a lot of continued support of some sort, and I feel I don't really support this project.
I'd like to respond briefly. These are all species that are in your guidance
I just said I love all these plants.
for work on coastal banks. It's right in the guidance, Cohasset Conservation Guidelines for the selection of plants for coastal banks.
No,
So
Steve,
that's-
I'm not denying that. I said I love all these plants. What I said was that in a natural ecosystem, you might find 4 or 6 of these plants that live harmoniously, but you don't find 20 different species kind of glommed in there like an English, rose garden. So, look, you've been in the business forever. You walk down a stretch of beach and you've got the beach plum and the blue stem and the bearberry and some asters, and that's what lives there. And then you walk another 100 yards down the beach and you've got the sumac and the blue stem and the something else. But ecological zones tend to develop in much less in a much smaller mixture of species than what's going on here.
Agreed entirely. Agreed entirely. And the idea is to find out what grows best. So you put everything into the soup bowl and find out what actually grows best, and that will take over. That's what we're doing here.
Well, that's what you're hoping for.
Well, no, that's what we're doing. That's the whole point of the quote unquote, call it an experiment. I'm a scientist. This is how we work. We try a thesis.
This is not a laboratory. This is the coastal bank, and we base our decisions on a certain firmness and not on a hypothesis.
Well, in this case, you've got a very good opportunity to find out what grows best on a coastal bank with a northeast facing slope above the pond.
And as I said from the first, and as I said from the first time this came in front of us, do a section and then we'll wait and we'll see how the test pans out. But this is, you know, over and over and over again, it's the idea of let's do another test plot, let's do another test plot, let's do another test plot. So, yeah.
Chris, can I ask a question as a layperson? Is there harm in doing more? I mean, it's certainly costing the homeowners quite a bit of money, I would imagine, to do this. Is it degrading the bank worse than it's already been? Because it's in pretty rough shape.
Well, again, I don't know the outcome. That's the problem.
Well,
the outcome is whatever takes over is the outcome. But
we agree.
Yeah,
we agree. That's exactly right.
Well,
we cannot predict the outcome here.
But you could.
You want a predicted outcome? I'm sorry, I can't give that to you. In fact, I can't give you that predicted outcome on any of the restoration projects I've done in the past 35 years. I could never have predicted some outcomes. So if you're looking for certainty, it's not going to happen.
Chris, let me add something. What we can predict here is that when Mr. Ivas finishes, the invasives will be gone at that moment in time, and that the owners are committed to keeping it that way. And that's the intention of doing an ecological restoration NOI, Chris. We're allowed to go down, we're allowed to go into the resource area, we're allowed to dig it up, chew it up, we're allowed to degrade the resource area under the laws of the wetlands in order to rehabilitate and to put nature back in its proper balance without the invasives that man has brought there 50 years ago, all right, which in this case is a black locust. Now, whether out of the 25 plants Mr. Ivas wants to put in, whether 10 or 20 or 25 survive is a bit of a crapshoot, but a lot of them will, and we'll know the invasives will be gone. And the objective here is really to get rid of the invasive species that are running rampant on the bank there. And we have the proper vehicle here, and we're doing it the way the rules and regulations say we should do it under the WPA. And those are the people we're working for, all right? So I'm not sure why we're getting so hot and bothered now. The project is 2/3 finished. I would be happy, Chris, as we agreed before, to wait and see whether the first 2/3 was a big success. I personally have been down there. I'm happy to see that the plans are moving along well. And what Mr. Ivas wants to do is to continue with the elimination of the invasive species at this moment in time, which is all part of the program he's put together. If we do nothing, all right, all we're going to do is waste 6 months on the project. We're not going to know any more 6 months from now. So I'm in favor of the project. I haven't been in favor when we first started, but I think we're so far into it now, and we're so far into tackling the invasives, they run a very, very good chance of making this a big success.
Time of visit is really of the essence here. I mean, things are starting to come to life. Now's the time to really remove those invasive species before they get just a little bit worse. And it's also the time to try, I think, maybe not all of these things, but at least move ahead. Waiting doesn't seem like a very good plan to me. We really can't predict which of these plants are going to take over and what this ultimately looks like. And it does seem like quite a lot of variety here, but clearly some of them aren't going to make it. And that's part of the program. You don't expect everything to make it here by the looks of things. But if 1/3 of them do, or even if 20% of them do, I would say that's success.
But Sorry, were you done, Tom?
Yeah, I am.
Um, let me take a step back. I am all for removing invasive species and reestablishing a ecologically healthy community in any resource area. I'm all for it. I'd like to see half the Norway maple woodlands of Cohasset cut down and reestablished. But I'm also a believer that you don't do it as a crapshoot. Now, if you want to give me I mean, I make my living as a landscape architect. I could have a survey done properly out here, and I could actually recommend removing pieces of stone and creating pockets, and I can plant a red cedar that I can guarantee you is going to live out there. I can plant some beach plum that I can guarantee you is going to live out there. And I can plant a lot of these other plants, and I can guarantee you they're going to live out there because the planning would be done in a way where I am willing to stake my reputation on those plants living. And what I object to here is the kitchen soup. That as Eric said, you throw everything in and you see what comes out in the end. Well, guess what? What if they all live? And instead of having a real ecological community, you have some mishmash.
Higher species diversity is always good. The higher the diversity of species,
Okay,
the more
thanks for the education, Steve. Appreciate it.
it is. It's always good.
I don't buy it.
Well,
Chris?
that's the way I look at things. The
Wow.
higher the species diversity,
Wait,
the more successful the ecosystem is.
okay.
Oh, Chris,
And it will last a longer time and be able to take all kinds of things that are thrown at it, whether it be climate or storms or whatever. That's how nature works.
So Steve, who's going to be the steward of this garden and determine whether or not something should live or die moving forward?
That would be the
nature.
applicant. That would be the applicant.
Okay, so if too many sumac come up in an area, those are all going to be left, right? Because that Mother Nature says that's a good plant. What about a certain type of thistle?
Thistles we don't like thistles. We take
all
out
thistle? All thistle?
Yes, all thistle.
They're all invasive.
I'm not sure if they're all invasive. You may know that better than myself.
Well,
But I take out all thistle that show up on my property.
yes, but is that based in science, or is that based in the fact you don't want to get pricked?
That's based in they don't belong in that particular ecosystem.
So now we're back to where it belongs in the ecosystem. But
Chris, hold on a second.
so as stewards in the future, how do we know that this is going to be managed so that it is a proper ecosystem? It's not being planted in any particular way. So how do we know what comes in the future belongs or doesn't belong?
What survives will make it part of the proper ecosystem. 2 years ago, I put together a pamphlet, which is coastal zone management plantings for this area, and a list of all the plants that Steve has pulled his selections from. We authored that. The Conservation Committee offered it, and it's available to anyone who wants it. And he's used that list. That's where the plants have come from. It was
Right.
coastal zone management for this area of Massachusetts. We have a scientist who's driving this, a man who's done this many, many times before. And he believes if we put in 20 plants and 15 survive, we're doing really well. And whether they're 10 sumacs or 1 sumac, that's up to Mother Nature, not up to us. And
But Eric, what I'm saying,
let me finish. I think if the scientists are willing to go that route, we got to run with them. or we run the risk of, turning our backs on the whole thing, and we're back to the invasive species running rampant that we had before, which none of us want.
To add to this, I think we have the invasives that we have to remove. Unfortunately, this project has gone on forever and we're in 2/3 into it. So I would like to focus on finishing section 3. Originally, if we look back, it wasn't the homeowner condo owner's fault that this property got stripped and destroyed. They have been really trying to restore this bank. So, and then this plan before us, as odd and unusual as it is, I'm sorry, Mr. Ives, but to me, it's a little odd looking, but it does look like you do have some sort of system here with your dots where you are putting pockets of berry and blue stem. And if the homeowners of this condo want to put excessive or over amounts of plants into this, then it's their cost that they're putting into it, not. But it seems like it is growing upon the visit that I made. There is growth coming. I think we should move forward with this. Maybe we should wait just a little bit and start pulling the garlic mustard seed, and wait a little bit on the planting into the.
The planting is not, excuse me, sorry, but the planting is not coming till the fall. The next stage is trying to get the invasives out during the summertime, and then planting in the fall. Now, this is a list of plants that may not be available in the fall, but we'll use, hopefully, the majority of them. As you know, fall plantings are tough because some nurseries, or many nurseries, run out of things. So we're not expecting to do any planting until the fall sometime, after September 15th, I would imagine, when things cool down.
So you're going to put all these plants in the fall season in
Yes.
October or
Yes.
September?
Oh, sure.
Not stagger it?
No, that's how gardening is done, madame.
That's right.
I plant. That's how I plant.
And when
don't plant like that.
When are the removals going to begin?
As soon as you sign the notice of the order conditions. And we have the 10-day appeal period for the abutters. Again, all by hand, low impact work, by hand, no machinery, none whatsoever.
So again, this is going in stages. So the stage that you're recommending at this point is to remove the invasives.
Exactly.
So this
And
would then be 3.
Then you have the entire summer to review and observe and make recommendations.
And revisit the planting plan?
If you would like to put that into the order of conditions, please do. I think that's a good idea.
Chris, would that make you feel better?
Not really.
No.
I mean, because even if I assume that Mother Nature is going to determine what lives and what dies, the real concern here is that the stewards of this property would have to have a vast knowledge of plants in order to be able to distinguish between invasives and natives that are appropriate, and they would have to continually manage this for perpetuity to make sure that this actually succeeds over some lifetime. And I don't see a lay person being able to do it over a.
I'll just comment on that. So having spoken with Miss Bernstein, I think she's extremely knowledgeable in the different plant species, what's native, what's not, what will benefit wildlife as far as food availability for birds and such, I don't have any doubt that she would not be capable of monitoring this.
And neither do
But
I.
she won't be there forever. And then, you know, it only takes a season for the locusts to come back.
And they're already there right now. So, you know,
Right.
I think the worst case scenario is you come back to what's already there, which is a bank full of invasives. I think, you know, it's worth the effort to make the attempt. The worst case scenario is you wind up with what's there now. The best case scenario is that you have some invasives removed and some native species in their place.
The idea is if you have enough native species, the invasives won't be able to get another foothold. That's the idea.
Chris, we have a plan. We have.
I think we should order a motion.
I'm sorry. We have people backing the project, spending tens of thousands of dollars to make it.
No, it's not tens of thousands of dollars, Eric. You and your numbers are always off.
I'm sorry. If you look at what they've spent over the last 2 years, it's been tens of thousands of dollars, I'm afraid, my friend. All right.
Just on permitting alone, frankly.
They want to go ahead. Why are we standing in their way? We have no plan ourselves. Let them, their science-driven plan, let them go ahead and get it done. It's no skin off of our back. Why are we being so hoity-toity about getting it exactly right? Damn it.
First of all, Eric, we are not being hoity-toity. What you're suggesting is I'm being hoity-toity. Now listen to me.
No, I don't want to hear. I'm going.
You work on emotion 95% of the time, and I'm trying to work on science, and I'm trying to work on bylaws.
He is going ahead with the bylaws to the letter, Mr. Chairman, to the letter.
I even filled out the variance request application.
Let's find a way to move forward.
Fine. Do I hear a motion?
Marianne Weatherall makes a motion to issue,
Woodpecker.
Sorry, that was my computer. To restore the coastal bank at 589, 595 Jerusalem Road. To issue an order of conditions with the first step to remove the invasives. To start the cleanup within that, to remove the invasives. Eric, could you add to that?
I would say to remove the invasives, to study in the first half of the summer, to study the situation we have at hand, preparing for further planting in the fall, and then to have us review the final planting plan at one of the, say, the meeting in July and August, depending on the situation we have at hand. And that's all with regard to phases 1, 2, and 3 being successful in the next few months. Now, that probably doesn't make much sense, Marianne.
No, but we are going to review it. We'll see where the plants have grown by the end of the summer, how it has restored itself.
But
then decide on the next steps.
Is to review the planting.
The next step is this is the next step. The planting is the next step. You're trying to make a motion to accept this plan.
I am, and we want to review where they are at the end of the summer, because they're going to we're going to look at the invasives. We're going to look at stage 1 and 2 and how they've grown, and then I think we would decide from there if they can start planting.
So I think
Steve points out, as Steve points out, there's already an experiment underway. Phase 1 should by the end of or middle of summer or towards the end of summer, when the planting is imminent, we should be able to review what's happened in phase 1 and 2 and maybe take some guidance from that. And maybe this planting list would shrink, because otherwise they're going to end up with a bank that looks pretty patchy. It's going to have a certain type of distribution of plants on the east side and something entirely different on the west side, and maybe that's not the best thing. So sure. we were wondering, well, what's coming up? What survived the winter and stuff? And that we already have this experiment sort of in progress, and it should act as some sort of guidepost for what to do next.
That would
And I
provide
would think
climate
I would think we want to reevaluate, remove the invasives and wait until maybe June and see what's going on in phase 1 and 2. And maybe Steve will reconsider whether he wants to put so many different types here. I mean, I agree that biodiversity is good. Maybe this could be scaled back a bit to have some assurance that the ones that he ultimately selects in consultation with us, of course, are more likely to work than some of the other ones that are on this list now.
And that have maybe done very well in the first phase. Yes, absolutely.
So I think it sounds like, so I think what it sounds like is Marianne is making a motion to issue the order of conditions with the condition that there would be an update from the applicant in a public hearing to update the commission on progress. And I think probably at that time it would be appropriate to look at a revised planting plan based on what's available next fall. Does that sound right?
And what was successful
Or what, yes.
in the
what was
phase 1 and
successful?
phase 2.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be the update that we would be looking for before the plantings go in the fall.
Yes.
Jeff,
Okay.
what you're saying is that we accept half of the proposal that Steve has made, which is the dealing with the invasives, but not to go ahead with his, at this stage, with the planting plan.
Right.
No, the application is in total. And all we're saying is that there needs to be review prior to the planting plan.
Okay.
Right. So I can add that as a condition that we receive an update at a public hearing as to the progress of the conditions there on the site. And at that time, we would review a revised planting plan if needed based on availability of plants.
That's fine.
I would also like to add conditions. The first being that no native species are removed from this bank,
Agreed.
Fine.
and that invasive species will continue to be removed from this bank.
Agreed. Absolutely. That's
And that's the
Our program.
education that they receive, that they are doing.
right.
That's this particular homeowner's hope at this given time.
I think we're right about Mrs. Birdston. She has been committed to trying to restore this for at least 2 years. I
Yeah.
think will be training anyone that moves into that condo community
Got staying.
that they have to restore this area and continue to make it ecological success.
All right, having heard, are there any other conditions?
Yeah, Chris, I have one, and it's probably redundant. I'd just like to add that the success of this summer will be done free of any fertilizers or chemical additives to encourage the growth, because we don't want any chemistry going on here.
And
Agreed. Thank you.
and I will add one more. In the removal of invasive species, the ground shall not be allowed to erode into Straits Pond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
And then everything should be done by hand, all hand removal.
Right.
Chris, is there some sort of cover crop that could be put in there that wouldn't that would stabilize the soil that is acceptable?
A summer cover crop?
Yeah, so, just some kind of something that is I guess it's going to be, it's going to be an alien species, not going to be a native plant, I suppose. But is there something that could be used to, it wouldn't be effective to put silt socks there. I mean, I've been down on that bank, and it would be totally ineffective to try to put a siltation barrier down there because of the jumble of stones that exist there. And I agree completely that once you start pulling this stuff out, then there is a real risk of losing what little soil there is, first of all. And secondly, adding sediment to the pond that it just doesn't need. It's already enough mud down there.
Is there like a natural fiber, like a jute mat or anything that can be put there?
Yeah, how do we control siltation in this situation?
Yeah, usually one method would be to use like geotextile fabrics, which could be, staked into place over any bare
Open
soils.
soil? Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, possibly. Tim, there's a bundle of Xeriscape grass mixes and various seed mixes you could throw down. The problem is getting rid of them in September when you want to plant.
Yeah, that's why I think that the textiles would be better suited just to not really allow anything to grow. So when the fall comes around and it's time to put the plantings in, you can remove those and put your plants in. And in the meantime, they'll prevent any erosion from occurring.
Yes, you might have to use jute mat underneath the geotext for this very steep slope. That's all.
So that's going to inhibit these invasives from sprouting as soon as you turn your back on them too, I suppose, which is
Yes.
probably a good idea.
That's good.
Jeff, can you read back?
Well, Angela's going to love us for that one, but do I hear a second?
Whatever it is, Chris, I second it.
Okay, having heard a motion and a second to issue a order of conditions for 589 and 595 Jerusalem Road, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherall,
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Chris McFarland, nay. That vote passes 4-1 to 0. We're going to need I'm going to make a motion to issue a variance to work within the 50-foot buffer. Do I hear a second?
Second.
That.
I heard a motion and a second for issuance of a variance to work within the 50-foot buffer. Take a vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherall,
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Chris McFarland, nay. That vote passes 4-1. I think that's it.
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Travis.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Sure. I hope we get out there at the end of the summer and we're very amazed at what's taken place during the summer. We look forward to it.
Thank you, Steve.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yep. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, our next order of business, continued from February 25th, 2021, is an RDA 21-02 for 15 Diab Lane, which is an alteration to a stormwater mitigation.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should just remind people that the property that was to be heard at 7:30, 1 Pleasant Street, is not going to be heard this evening.
That's correct. Thank you.
Well done.
Jeff, who are we bringing in here?
It's Stephen Ryder is the attorney for the applicant.
Okay, before we go ahead with this, Jeff, prior to tonight's meeting, I asked you for an explanation of this, and it was quite helpful to myself, and I know all the commissioners weren't here. Could you explain again why this hearing is taking place?
Sure. So in 2007, there were 3 stormwater permits issued for 3 separate new single-family homes on the property. The stormwater permits don't expire, so those are still in place. On the lot 15 or 15 Diab Lane, there was there is a small sliver of 100-foot buffer zone from a wetland which is across the street and behind the house across the street, which extends out onto the property. So part of the stormwater mitigation for the new 3 houses is a crushed stone channel to carry water that would come off the properties into the catch basin at the south or the north end of the property. So in 2007, a negative determination was issued for the work in the buffer zone, which was filed under an RDA. The determination is only valid for 3 years. So in order to make the alteration by installing the crushed stone trench as part of the stormwater mitigation, the applicant needs to have a valid negative determination. So basically they're before us again. Nothing has changed. It's the same proposal. It's just to have a new determination issued for that work in the buffer zone.
Okay.
Is that clear to everybody, or does anybody have any questions?
Jeff, do you mean 2017? You said 2007 twice.
Oh, is that what I was saying? I'm sorry. Yeah, 2017. Sorry.
Right.
So does everyone get that? The stormwater permit's still in effect, that we just need the
Variance.
the RDA reapproved, basically. Mr. Ryder, would you like to add your bit to that?
Well, I would, except Mr. Summers' presentation was so good. I don't think I need to waste your time. That's exactly
He stole your
where
thunder.
we're at.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Does everyone understand what's going on?
Is there anything that we can view to see more about that?
It's really a timing issue, right, Chris? It's just. Mhm.
Yeah. Jeff's going to pull it up.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll find it.
Mr. Ryder, are you aware, is the owner or his contractor prepared to start work?
Yes, I think they are.
Okay. Do you know if he's applied for any other permits at this time?
I don't think he's applied for the building permit yet.
Okay.
So no, I think he wanted to get this squared away, and it's also he's kind of, this was not on hold, but delayed, I'd say, from where he expected it to be.
Mhm.
And now he's kind of in a position to bring this forward and get it done.
Okay. Well, as you know, the Conservation Commission is only looking at wetland protection and stormwater management. Obviously, everything else has to go through the building department and whomever they determine is in need of review for this. So
Correct.
So can everybody see the site plan?
yes.
So this lot down here is 15. This line here is the 100-foot buffer zone. This is Diab Lane. So the buffer zone is off to the west. So this little chunky line here is the crushed stone trench. So that's the only alteration that they're proposing in the 100-foot buffer zone. And as you can see, as part of the stormwater mitigation feature, so what they're proposing is, gutters to capture the roof runoff, which goes into these chambers, and then when these chambers overflow, they'll be directed into this crushed stone trench, which will then drain into the catch basin located up here. So again, the only work proposed in the 100-foot buffer zone is the installation of this trench, which is part of the mitigation features for the stormwater permits, which are still valid.
Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public?
I don't see anything in the question and answer. I know Elaine raised her hand. Do you want her to write her comment, or do you want to listen to her?
Either way, it's fine.
Let me see if I can.
Here, I can allow her to talk. There you go. Elaine, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good evening. Elaine Breslow, 714 Jerusalem Road. Nice to see everyone again and some new faces. I had a question. We were on the schematic that we just had on with the shared screen. It was, I was interested, I understand where this new crushed stone or whatever will go by the buffer zone. Did it look to me like the driveway is going out onto Howe Road for this property?
No, the driveway is going onto Diab Lane.
Onto Diab. Okay. All right.
Would you like to see it again?
Yeah, if we just could, just for clarification. If you don't,
1 second.
I'll be quick.
That's quite all right.
Yep. So here's the driveway up here.
Yep. So but Diab, you said, was to the left, no?
No.
This is
Howe
Howe
Road is
Road.
to the left.
Oh, that's Howe Road. Okay.
That's correct. You're.
I'm opposite. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the driveway was there.
I don't know where you're located, but this is going down the hill of Howe Road.
Correct. I guess my concern is we have a tremendous amount of water that runs down Howe Road. Certainly that's been exacerbated by the new construction on Tad Lane, and then the home that they reconfigured the driveway next to the lot on Tad Lane, which is now considered Howe Road again. So they've, chiseled into all of the ledge there. And my concern is that given the fact that climate is changing and we have exponential incidents of rain, and the kind of storms we have are producing a lot more water. Not only is it icy and becomes an issue in terms of safety, but even when it's not winter, it's rather treacherous, and you can see all this accumulating at the bottom of Howe Road to the point where cars have to onto Jerusalem Road. So again, I'm just very concerned about obviously the buffer, and just really making sure that we're not adding more water onto already a very steep incline road that is not pitched well.
So, Ms. Breslow, this isn't really my position to go over this. Typically, the engineer would be here, but because the stormwater permit is still in effect, I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis here. The stormwater regulation requires that the engineering for stormwater management does not increase the amount of runoff leaving this property. Now, I don't have the actual figures in front of us, but if I remember correctly, there was actually a decrease. And the reason being that right now the undeveloped site runs right down to the road. There's a little bit of a depression along the side, but then a fair amount of water kind of comes out of that depression and ends up on the road. The applicant in this stormwater permit put in this stone trench, which has a certain depth of stone to it, which helps to collect the water, and that water will, hopefully some of it will infiltrate. We know there's a lot of ledge up there, but it then does go to a catch basin at the east end of the trench. So we hear you very clearly. We understand this is a concern for everyone who lives on Howe Road, and it'll be a concern for the people who live on Diab Lane should these houses be developed. But the stormwater management, it was approved, it's in effect. I think the engineer did a good job on trying to help mitigate that issue that you're concerned about.
I guess I hear what you're saying, and I understand. Believe me, I've been here from the beginning with this particular applicant who has been, shall we say, a challenge. And now with the additional approvals of everything else that's going on upstream, you know, we're just keep adding and adding and adding, and with again, you know, the thought of removing all this ledge, clear cutting all these trees, adding a little bit of this, you know, stone or gravel area here, given the incline, I just call it upstream, you know, when you're at that lot, that highest point lot and coming downstream. I guess I wonder if there's anything else further that we can ask of the applicant. And who's going to watch all this? You know, Jeff is leaving. Sorry. Again, there's just a lot that happens up there that it's hard to keep an eye on. So I would really ask that the commission be really diligent and vigilant once this project begins. And again, what's happening with the other? There are 3 lots here. So why is it only that we're talking about 15 now and not the other 2 as well?
So Elaine, I understand your concerns, but just to kind of back this whole thing up, you know, the purpose of this hearing really isn't to redeliberate the issuance of the stormwater permits. They're already in place. That these stormwater mitigation features have already been approved. The only thing we're looking at here is this is an RDA filing, so it's a wetlands permit, and this dashed line here is the 100-foot buffer zone to a wetland, which is across the street and behind the house to the street. So just the only thing we're considering here is, you know, the installation of this crushed stone trench in the 100-foot buffer zone. So really the question at stake here is the installation of this crushed stone trench going to have an adverse effect on the wetland across the street behind the house over here? And at the last, you know, 3 years or 3+ years ago, when the first determination was issued, the answer was no. That's why the RDA negative determination was issued. That's only valid for 3 years. So they're coming back before us now with the same exact proposal to put this crushed stone trench in as part of the stormwater mitigation features. That's why we're only talking about 15 Diab Lane and not the other lots, because they're not within the buffer zone to the wetland.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Breslow, I might mention that Jeff's boss is John Halen. He's new to the town. He probably doesn't know all the nuances of town, but you might want to just reach out to Mr. Halen and just let him know about your concerns on Howe Road and that particular area. And I think that he will certainly, he's very vigilant. That's my understanding of why he's been hired as the new kind of head of the department and building inspector. So you might want to just reach out.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I would point out that some things have changed. Ms. Breslow mentioned that 2 new houses at the top of the hill have changed the flow on Howe Road. And so that's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the same time, it probably hasn't changed anything with regard to the wetland itself. It's again, it would get back to that stormwater permit, which we're not relitigating. But conditions have changed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Could we consider, since they may be building this soon, this trench, that we have some kind of environmental monitor to watch over it, just as it's being built in this 100-foot buffer zone?
Yeah, that would be my job, or whoever the next person that's going to come in to fill my role. That's their responsibility.
Well, and Jeff, typically, a schedule of work has to be presented to you, right? For work within a buffer zone?
They have to provide 48 hours of notice before they begin to commence the work.
Okay. Well, John Halen said that he would be following up on everything that you would be doing in the next, couple weeks until either they get an interim or a new agent, so.
Right. And I don't believe they're planning to do this work anytime soon, from what I understand. I don't know, maybe Attorney Ryder can comment on this, but I think they're planning to begin work on number 3 first. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think he's going to move forward with this project, but it's not like 2 weeks. It's I think he wants to do the other project first and then move into this.
Any other comments?
So just to inform the public, what can they expect on what this trench would look like? Just how deep would it be? Can you give us some information?
It's 3 feet wide and 6 to 8 inches deep.
Okay. So it shouldn't affect, I mean, we will be expecting some kind of construction. It's just small excavators for digging 3 feet wide along the road.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yep. Okay. So, would this be a -2?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to issue a -2 determination for RDA 21-02 at 15 Diab Lane. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second to issue a -2 determination at 15 Diab Lane, we'll take a vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Trish Grady,
Trish Grady, aye.
Marion Weatherall,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5 to 0 to 0.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Ryder, sorry you had to wait so long for this to come up tonight.
No problem. I actually like to listen because I always learn something. Thank you very much. Good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't get many compliments.
Our final hearing of the evening is NOI 21-07, 99 Border Street, continued from March the 25th, 2021. Looks like Jeff Hassett is here to speak to this project.
Yep. Good evening, Chris. Good evening, Commission. Jeff Hassett here with Morse Engineering, and also here is Chris McKenna, the applicant for this project. And we've had 2 hearings on this project. At the last hearing, we continued it in order to do 2 items. One, we replaced some of the plantings. The 2 dogwoods are now proposed to be black tupelos, and the boxwoods are proposed to be shamrock inkberries. In addition to that, we're waiting for someone to inspect the tree and give us a peer review on whether, on their opinion on the condition of it. Maltby Tree did finally get back to us. They wrote a letter dated April 16th, which they note that there is a cavity expanding to 12 to 16 inches, which is approximately 50% of the circumference of the tree. And for that reason, they note that the tree is at high risk of failure and they recommend to have it removed, which is consistent with the report that was done on for the applicant himself. So with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Jeff, could you bring up your current plan?
Sure.
Sorry.
Jeff, I understand that they recommended taking down the tree. How would you stabilize the wall, though? I mean, there wasn't any recommendation on if you took out, would they take out the roots of the tree or would they keep it in? I wasn't clear on what.
They're gonna leave the stump.
The stump will remain.
Stump remain.
To stabilize the wall.
Yeah, the wall is currently stabilized. The issue would be if you pulled that out, it could destabilize it.
Mm-hmm.
So the stump will be left in place.
Okay.
Jeff, let me ask you a question. Over time, as the trunk and the roots rot, will the bank slowly become unstable because of that?
No, I don't believe so. That you might get a bit of a depression that you would need to fill in, but you wouldn't have like a mechanism of pulling that out from right behind the wall. That's where you're gonna get the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we're discussing whether to remove the tree or not. Is that what we're discussing, Chris?
No, this was an NOI.
Yeah.
For if you remember correctly, there was a NOI issued for this project when it was under different ownership. Under that different ownership, the whole backyard was cleared. And so this applicant has come back with a new proposal and requesting a new order of conditions.
Yeah, I'll just say too that, probably 95% of the work that was approved on the original order of conditions is already done, which was basically, the removal of the old house, the building of the new house. Of course, there's still a lot of work to be done inside the house. But that's not really under our purview. The work that was to remain was basically, completing the back side of the house, I guess, for lack of a better term. Now, the reason that this has been in limbo, this whole project, for I guess a year or two, was the original owners went through a separation or something, and so this project has essentially stopped. Now that there's a new owner of the property, or a new potential owner, that's the reason why they're proposing this new plan, because they have obviously different plans for that backyard.
Jeff, could we see the rest of the plant list? I think you're at the bottom of it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'll zoom in a little bit too.
No, that's fine. Oh. Jeff, there's just two comments I'd like to make about this. The hollies, and I'd love to see if you could put an extra foot on those, make them 4 foot instead of 3. They'll grow pretty quickly, but I know the neighbor has concerns, and it's short money to go from a 3-foot holly to a 4-foot holly, just to give them a little, a better start. The other thing, you've got you've got 7 hollies out there. It would be good if they were females, but 1 male, which will give you nice berry production, which is, you know, it's good bird food, and they look nice too.
Okay. So the females produce the berries, or?
The females produce the berries, but you need 1 male to pollinate.
Chris,
Oh,
are they pollinated by the shamrock inkberry, which is an island?
No,
No?
no, the different species, they're not going to cross pollinate.
I was under the impression that all hollies cross-pollinated, but okay.
Yeah, sure. Speaking for the applicant, yeah, I think that's a very good request, and increasing the bushes from 3 feet to 4 feet
Okay.
should be a minimal cost, so that's fine.
Does anyone else have any questions or concerns about this application?
If there's any comments from the public, if you just, you know, you can make your comments to the question and answer.
Jeff, could I ask you to zoom out again, please? Only because I want to ask Jeff Summers a question. Jeff, because we're working on the coastal bank in the planting of these 2 trees, do we need a variance on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's work within the 50-foot buffer zone.
Okay. Oh, so it's all work within the 50 then, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna need to issue that as well.
Jeff, I had a question too, which I brought up last time, but I wasn't really clear on it. But we are extending the gangway and the landing. So if they're doing that and applying for a Chapter 91 filing, does the existing pier just stay as it is, or do we have to adjust it to make it taller?
So the pier will remain the way it is. The only permanent modification to that existing pier is the 3.5 foot by 3.5 foot landing to attach the gangway to, and that's going to be so the gangway and the float are a permit issued by the harbor master because they're removable. That modification to the pier, just the 3.5 by 3.5, does require a modification to the Chapter 91 permit. But yeah, but the pier itself, it's not the intent to do any other work other than add that portion to it.
So Jeff Summers, does then the existing pier just stays the same, but even if they're applying for the Chapter 91, does that 3x5 landing, that little modification, does that have to be taller? Because Chapter 91 talks about wildlife and people walking underneath it. And I know it's a pier, but I just wanted to understand that better.
Yeah, I since it's already permitted, I don't think they would. I really don't know. I can't speak for the wetlands and waterways people at DEP, but I don't imagine that they would make any modifications to the height of that. The only modification is, you know, essentially that bump out that Jeff's talking about. I don't imagine that they would require a height change of it.
I think there are
structure.
I think there are kind of 2 reasons they wouldn't. One is that bump out isn't going to restrict pedestrian access any more than the existing pier would. It's not any lower than the existing. And secondly, it is about 6 feet off the ground. So it would comply.
Any other comments or questions? No? Well, would someone like to make a motion for an order of conditions? Okay, I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions for NOI 21-07 at 99 Border Street. Does anyone have any conditions to add to the order other than the general conditions?
Just that the hollies are planted at 4 feet instead of 3.
Okay, great. And that at least one female.
Right.
I mean, one male, at least one male is planted. Okay, do I hear a second?
Fish Grady, second.
Having heard a motion and a second to issue an order of condition at 99 Border Street, we'll take a vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, I.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Fish Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherall,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 5-0-0. Like to make a motion to issue a variance for work at 99 Border Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Haven't heard a motion and a second to issue a variance for work at 99 Border Street. We'll take a vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, I.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Trish Grady,
Fish Grady, aye.
Marianne Weatherall,
Aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That passes 5-0-0. I think that's it.
Great, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Okay. Jeff, do you have a conservation update on your last night?
No.
No, nothing to sign, nothing to, nope. You have some paperwork that you're gonna try to get done tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'll take care of all this tomorrow and get it in the mail.
And then we're going to have to, you'll pass it on to John, whoever, so we get it signed in 2 weeks? Is there anything you need signatures on?
No,
Oh, okay, all right.
Nope.
Just want to make sure. All right. No one came to you at the last minute and said, close this out for me and stuff like that?
no,
No? Okay.
so, no, we're good.
All right, excellent. I have one thing. I mentioned a while back about meeting with Karis as legal counsel to talk about a few things. And I'm wondering if people are interested in having a meeting with Karis, whether to talk about procedure, bylaws. There's a couple fines that are floating out there. I don't know if other people are interested in having a meeting or not.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Yeah, I even think yeah.
Chris, I think it ought to be an agenda-driven meeting. Should it be put at $250 an hour or 350? I think we need to have a list of things we want to cover. I know last time we had the meeting, was it a year and a half ago? It was very valuable in getting an interpretation legally of what it takes to have a variance. This unusual circumstances, and that was a great discussion. All right, and very helpful. So, but if we had a list of subjects, I'd feel more comfortable with it, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, then maybe I will try to make a first pass at that. If anyone wants to add to it, that's great. And then we'll try.
Can I recommend that we each, within a week, send you a list?
That'd be great.
That we would like to have included, Chris, if you don't mind.
That's fine. That's fine. And just so everyone's aware, this part of this came out of the fact that there was a new application for Rust Way, and Jay was concerned that maybe we were going to do something wrong. And so but Karis's first response was, that hearing's already open, we can't talk about it. So that's, don't bother putting that one on your list.
Okay.
If it's an open hearing, we are not going to talk about it specifically. If it's procedural or something like that, then we can talk about it. Or if it has to do with one's interpretation of bylaws or something like that.
She is looking into that, though, that issue. Russ.
Rust Way?
Mhm.
there's nothing for her to look into at this time.
Okay.
I think this whole question of open meeting, Chris, we need to discuss, because if you go through the town manual, an open meeting's defined, well, a deliberation's defined one way. When we talk to Jay, he talks about it a bit differently. And I'm kind of caught between the two. So I'd like to have maybe a legal clarification on that. I'll put that on my list to you.
That's great. That's very good. Okay.
You know, I think it would be helpful for Karis to weigh in on how we can use meeting sessions for each other, to have almost like post-mortem education, like after, you know, project's been done, being able to discuss the thought process behind it. You know, and I think that would really help a lot of us new folks understand, you know, some of the dynamics that goes on behind the scenes that, you know, it's hard to, you can't weigh in on and discuss it necessarily in the public forum, but after the fact, post review, I think would be very educational for someone like me anyway. And she might be able to weigh in on what we can and can't do.
Yeah, I think that'd
Something
be
like
great.
that.
That'd be great. I mean, my personal hope in this was to, and I spoke to Jeff about it at one point, is sometimes I think I think certain areas the bylaws are very specific, and other areas are very gray, and we all have different ways of interpreting the gray. And my original thought on this was, could we get someone to tell us how to interpret the gray? Like, is there a way to do that? And then they said he thought someone at MAC might help us, but he reached out and hasn't gotten any response from that. So I don't know, maybe this isn't the right forum for it, but let's collectively put a list together and we'll see what we can do.
All right.
Sounds
All right.
good. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Great.
Jeff, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Jeff,
Right.
Take
are you
care.
gonna send us the Zoom sign on for your meetings up in Bedford, so we can sit?
I don't think so. Well, you
I
guys
think
are
we can get
welcome
them
to
off the
show up.
webpage.
You guys will be
Imagine if Eric
the
shows
audience
up.
asking questions and stuff.
We'll
Best,
torture you.
First meeting.
I hope it goes well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wish you all the best.
Yes.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Kathy.
Best.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for all your
No
work.
decision on
Thanks,
Africa
man.
yet?
Say again?
I was saying, Tom, no decision on Africa yet?
Oh,
Have you made any decision on Africa? Or
Oh.
or wherever you were?
Well, it'd be nice if the decision was mine, but it's
Oh,
not.
I see. So
Right.
we're gonna get 2 days notice from you too?
No, you're not. You might get 2 days notice that, yeah, I'm willing, but I'm not going to scamper off from this until I have some travel. And this may all resolve. It's almost impossible to say. This has been going on since 2013.
Oh, gee.
And I've had long periods when nothing happened, and then suddenly I'm packing my bags. So it's kind of hard to predict here.
Is it proportionate to the price of oil in the international market?
No, actually not at all. This is a uranium project.
Okay.
So it's and it doesn't seem to respond well to the price of uranium either. It responds well to the whims of treasure hunters.
Ah.
Vlad Putin, I bet.
Well, that sounds like it pays better than Jeff's position. I was going to try to talk you into going there instead.
Well, yeah. Actually, I'm not getting paid at all, so anything would be better than that.
Jeff,
Anyway.
I'm going down and have dinner, all right? I'll catch you later. Thank you,
Bon
everybody.
appetit.
Oh, a motion to close the hearing.
Oh,
So
second.
moved.
All right. Second.
Thank you.
Aye.
Hi, Jeff.
Good night, everyone. Bye,
Good
Jeff.
luck, Jeff.
Yeah,
Thank
bye,
you.
all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Jeff.
Good
so,
night.
We wish you all the best.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Leave us a lot of paper.
Be a
to look at.
stranger.